Picture a secret underground city, lost artifacts untouched for centuries, hidden knowledge that could rewrite history, ancient secrets waiting to be uncovered. Basically, it sounds like the plot of every Indiana Jones movie, but before you start packing your bags, there's a catch. This discovery was made by a team of researchers in Italy. They claim their radar scans prove that there's a vast hidden complex below the pyramids.
They rise from the desert like questions carved in stone, massive, mathematical, and immovable. For over 4,500 years, the pyramids of Giza have stared back at us, daring us to understand. Time has worn their edges, but not their mystery. We've walked their shadowed corridors, studied their geometry, speculated about their purpose, and still, they withhold their greatest truths. Were they tombs, temples, time machines? The deeper we dig, the more their silence speaks. But now, something has changed. The tools we use are no longer shovels and guesses. Today, we scan stones with cosmic rays, read voids through heat signatures, and map the Earth's skin like a surgeon with an MRI. And the pyramids, those timeless titans, are responding. They're revealing hidden chambers, whispering of subterranean cities, and drawing our gaze not just skyward, but deep underground. Layer by layer, clue by clue, a new story is unfolding, not just about Egypt's monuments, but about the people who built them and perhaps the knowledge they left behind. So, what are pyramids trying to tell us? Let's find out. It had no name, no inscription, no record in any ancient scroll. Yet it was there, embedded within the Great Pyramid, behind slabs of stone thought to be solid for eternity. A corridor that, by all historical logic, shouldn't exist. And yet it does. In 2023, after years of speculation and scattered anomalies in earlier thermal scans, something unmistakable appeared, a faint trace of emptiness. Not in the sense of ruin or decay, but an architectural choice, a hollow space, perfectly formed, concealed within the north face of the Great Pyramid. The location? Just above the original entrance, beyond a façade of massive chevron-shaped stones. The implication? Far more than structural. Because when something that's never been touched for 45 centuries suddenly says, "I'm here," the question becomes, why was it hidden at all? The corridor was narrow, roughly 9 meters long, but its precision defied coincidence. Smoothly lined, with perfect right angles, and sealed so cleanly into the pyramid's face that even modern equipment took years to detect it. No ancient texts mention its existence. No explorer, tomb raider, or archaeologist ever hinted at a passage in this place. It wasn't looted, it wasn't disturbed, it was waiting. But here's the twist. This passage was never entered. Not physically, not by crawling or chiseling. Instead, it was seen through particles from space. Muon tomography, a technique as alien to ancient Egypt as smartphones and satellites, became the key. As muons from cosmic rays passed through the pyramid's mass, detectors positioned strategically within the structure caught irregularities in density. In other words, parts of the pyramid that should be solid weren't. They were empty. And those empty regions formed the shape of something unmistakably man-made, a passage, perfectly carved, hidden in plain stone. Why hide a corridor here? And more importantly, what's beyond it? Theories raced ahead of evidence. Some experts proposed the corridor was designed to relieve pressure from the ceiling blocks of an adjacent chamber, a clever bit of load redistribution. But others weren't convinced. They pointed out that this engineering technique was already accounted for in other parts of the pyramid. Why duplicate it here, especially in a section that didn't require it structurally? Why spend such effort to carve and conceal what amounts to dead space, unless, of course, it wasn't dead space at all? Among the more provocative theories is the idea that the corridor leads somewhere, not necessarily to a tomb or treasure, but to a message. A chamber meant to preserve something not just from time, but from interference. Perhaps knowledge, perhaps prophecy, perhaps a riddle meant only for a future civilization capable of seeing what the ancients knew they'd never reach themselves. Because the corridor's placement isn't random, it aligns with key geometric axes of the pyramid and with certain celestial orientations, including the rising of specific stars long worshipped by ancient priests. But here's what truly stirs the imagination. The corridor is sealed on both ends, not collapsed, not unfinished, sealed by choice. Whoever built it wanted it to exist but not be found. Not yet. And so we ask the inevitable. Who were they hiding it from? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Perhaps it wasn't meant to be found by grave robbers, or rival dynasties, or even the generations of priests and builders that followed. Perhaps it was meant for us, or rather, for those with the tools to see without touching. The ones who wouldn't desecrate but decode. The ones who wouldn't smash walls but read shadows. In that light, the corridor isn't just a feature. It's a filter, a test to see whether we've earned the right to know what comes next. The discovery of this passage was the first domino, the first time the pyramid blinked in the modern age and said, "You're close." It reminded the world that we've barely scratched the surface. Beneath every assumption we've made about ancient Egypt, there are blueprints we haven't seen. That beyond every chamber we've entered, there might be another, one step deeper, one layer further into the mind of its creators. And it also raised another question, a chilling one. If this corridor remained hidden for over 4 millennia, what else have we missed? Because the pyramid didn't give us this passage easily. It took decades of subtle signals, slight thermal irregularities, minuscule density shifts. It took technology not even imagined a century ago. And still, it offered no door, no direct invitation, only a void, only the hint of an idea that this monument was never just a tomb, never merely a stone triangle on a postcard. It was and still is an archive, one built to last beyond civilizations, beyond language, beyond belief. But to understand what that archive contains, we have to go deeper. Because while this hidden corridor was the beginning of the mystery, it was not the end. In fact, it was only the first sign, the tip of a much larger, much older structure, buried not just under stone, but beneath our very expectations. And just below that surface, something else had already begun to stir. A structure so vast, it would stretch far beyond any pyramid and into something far more extraordinary. And recently, in 2025, a team of Italian and Scottish researchers, armed with deep penetrating radar and resonance mapping systems, scanned the bedrock beneath the Giza Plateau and returned with something no one expected, a sprawling subterranean complex. Not a burial shaft, not a sewer system, a city, or something like one. Massive cube-shaped voids emerged in the data, structured in rows, forming patterns. Spiraling ramps linked them vertically. Long horizontal passageways extended in all directions, bending slightly, as though designed to follow a path unseen by surface eyes. These were not natural caves. This was architecture. At first, the academic world hesitated. Was it interference? Misread signals? However, the data remained consistent. The structures were there. They extended not just beneath a single pyramid, but connected all 3 of Giza's great monuments, as if the pyramids themselves were simply the tips of something deeper, like mountainous chimneys rising from an underground domain. That idea, that the pyramids weren't freestanding monuments but entry points into a larger engineered environment, forced a complete re-examination of everything we thought we knew. And then came the echoes, literal ones. As acoustic sensors were dropped into exploratory boreholes near the plateau, they picked up irregular but repeating sonic patterns, bouncing through stone-like whispers through a long-forgotten hallway. Some chambers rang hollow. Others were so vast that the echoes didn't return for several seconds. Whatever was down there, it wasn't a series of isolated tombs. It was a continuous structure, carved with intent. But intent for what? To those who've studied ancient Egyptian myth, the parallels were impossible to ignore. The legendary Halls of Amenti, a mythical realm described as lying beneath Egypt's sacred lands, was said to contain divine records, astral gateways, and the throne room of judgment itself. Dismissed by many as a metaphor, the Halls of Amenti were often depicted as having layers, chambers, and a spiral of descent, disturbingly similar to what the radar scans now suggested. Of course, most Egyptologists won't admit that on record. They speak instead of anomalous architectural formations or subsurface void clusters. But behind closed doors, the implications are profound. Because if this is not a myth, if there truly is a city beneath Giza, the historical timeline of Egypt doesn't just shift, it fractures. Think about it. Such a project, thousands of feet underground, connecting vast tracts of land, complete with ventilation shafts and resonance-tuned cavities, would require a mastery of geology, acoustics, and planning that rivals or even exceeds modern engineering. It means that what we call ancient might be the residue of a civilization we have yet to recognize. Not primitive, not scattered, but precise, intentional, and completely hidden. And the timing is critical. The structures beneath Giza lie well below the water table, a fact that challenges the very foundation of the official timeline. If they were built during or after the conventional pyramid era, they would have flooded instantly. This begs the question, were they built before the last rise in the Nile's water levels? Before the last shifts in climate? That would place them thousands of years before the reign of Khufu. And if that's true, the people who built them weren't Egyptians, at least not the Egyptians we think we know. There are no inscriptions down there, no cartouches, no names of pharaohs declaring ownership. Whatever exists beneath Giza, it was not meant to glorify a ruler, it was meant to remain hidden. Perhaps it was sacred, perhaps it was dangerous, or perhaps it was simply too powerful to be trusted in the hands of empires that would rise and fall like dust on the wind. Yet what stirs most in the minds of those who've seen the scans isn't fear or wonder, it's hunger. A hunger to explore, to open, to enter. But doing so would mean drilling, cutting, violating layers of history that have remained undisturbed for millennia. It would mean risking collapse, not just of stone, but of paradigms. For now, the city sleeps. Sealed under limestone, beneath layers of bedrock and time, it waits. Not for explorers with picks and torches, but for those with patience, with technology, and with the humility to ask, what kind of civilization builds a city and then hides it beneath the world's most famous monuments? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear: the pyramids are not alone. They are sentinels, anchors, possibly even the keys to something far more expansive, a hidden civilization woven beneath the surface of Egypt like a secret blueprint of humanity's forgotten past. And if the final scan, the final probe, the final descent were to confirm it, if there truly is a city beneath the sands of Giza, older than our records, untouched by known civilization, then the question is no longer what is hidden, but what happens next. Because a lost corridor is a discovery, a buried chamber is a mystery, but an entire underground city? That is a reckoning. For the modern world, such a finding would collapse the scaffolding of history as we know it. Everything, from timelines to textbooks, from migration theories to the story of technological progress, would need to be rewritten. The idea that the earliest advanced urban planning, structural engineering, and symbolic cosmology emerged not in Mesopotamia, not in Greece, not in the Indus Valley, but deep beneath the feet of Africa would be impossible to ignore. It would be the end of the story we've been told. And at the beginning of the story, we've denied it. This city, if real, would represent more than architectural genius. It would signal the existence of a culture capable of shaping geology, mapping the cosmos, and encoding knowledge that endured beyond the lifespan of empires. And not merely as legend, but in stone, in silence, in deliberate concealment. It would suggest that our ancestors were not building upward toward understanding. They were guarding it, burying it, knowing it would only be safe in the hands of those who could decode it, not exploit it. But beyond what it means for humanity, there's a more important question. What does it mean for Africa? For too long, Africa's role in global history has been framed in the past tense, ancient glory, followed by modern struggle. Its contributions are buried beneath colonial narratives, its brilliance silenced by those who rewrote its legacy to begin with chains and end with pity. But a city like this, predating classical history, displaying scientific mastery, and rooted in African soil, wouldn't just restore pride. It would demand respect, not as a continent recovering from loss, but as the original steward of forgotten genius. Such a revelation would rewire everything, from museum halls to national identities. The African continent would no longer be seen as the pupil of Western progress, but as the teacher whose lectures were interrupted, whose libraries were burned, whose temples were pillaged, and whose blueprints were stolen and rebranded. And it wouldn't just be Egypt that reclaimed something. It would be Ethiopia, Sudan, Mali, Ghana, Nigeria, the Congo. Every corner of Africa that has held the scars of colonial erasure would stand taller, not just with pride, but with proof. Proof that African intelligence, sovereignty, and sacred systems were not primitive echoes of foreign greatness, but the source of it. For young Africans across the diaspora, the discovery of an ancient city beneath Giza would not just be news, it would be liberation, the lifting of a veil, a signal that they were never born after greatness, they were born from it. And for the rest of the world, it would be uncomfortable, because it would mean confronting the lie that Africa contributed nothing but labor, the lie that history flows northward, that knowledge is inherited only through conquest. A city buried under Giza would force a global reevaluation, one that doesn't just adjust timelines, but redistributes reverence. Of course, the politics would be immediate. The scramble to study it, to secure it, to dissect it under foreign labs, write foreign papers, and claim foreign breakthroughs. But for once, Africa must refuse. For once, this truth must stay rooted in African hands, protected by African voices, and interpreted through African eyes. Because the world won't know what to do with a city that predates its assumptions. But Africa will. Africa has always known. In the end, what does this discovery teach us? If all of this, the hidden passages, the buried chambers, the natural caves, the whisper of a lost city beneath our feet, if all of this tells us anything at all, it's that we don't know everything. We may barely know anything. For all our satellites and sonar, our radar scans and 3D models, the truth is humbling. The Earth is still hiding things from us. The past is still speaking in languages we haven't yet learned to hear. Beneath our most studied monuments, beneath sites we've walked for centuries, secrets remain untouched. This isn't just surprising, it's paradigm shifting. Because if a structure as famous, as photographed, as examined as the Great Pyramid still conceals undiscovered corridors and unknown chambers, then what else have we missed? How many other wonders lie beneath deserts, mountains, and oceans, waiting for the right frequency, the right algorithm, and the right humility? Because make no mistake, it's not just about having better tools. It's about having better questions. For centuries, we asked the wrong ones. We assumed the ancients were limited by their lack of electricity, their lack of computers, and their lack of industrial machines. But the real limitation wasn't theirs, it was ours. Our unwillingness to consider that knowledge doesn't always evolve in a straight line. That intelligence can take forms we don't expect. That mastery of stone, of sound, of sacred geometry could be just as advanced, just as precise as anything we call modern today. And so we looked at the pyramids and saw tombs. We looked at the tunnels and saw a coincidence. We looked at myths and saw fantasy. But now, slowly, science is circling back to what the ancients were trying to tell us all along, that there is more here than meets the eye, that some truths are not lost, they're simply buried. This isn't about aliens, it's not about fantasy, it's about humility. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes that the story of humanity is not a straight path from cave to computer. It's a cycle of remembering and forgetting, a loop of peaks and collapses, of golden ages buried beneath sand, and warnings carved in stone. And perhaps we are not at the height of civilization, but simply at one of its many recoveries. It's an uncomfortable thought. But the data doesn't lie. Chambers that shouldn't exist, voids in solid rock. Caves are older than any monument, structures that defy conventional timelines. Every discovery chips away at our arrogance. It forces us to admit that we don't know the full story, and that's the point. That's the beauty of it. The unknown is not something to fear. It's something to protect. Something to approach not with conquest, but with curiosity. So what would it mean if we truly confirmed the existence of a lost city beneath Giza? Let us know in the comments section. What do you have to say about this discovery? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.